Hello Facebook! Welcome to the 13th and final Witch on Fireside chat here from my home during the COVID-19 pandemic shut-in, lockdown, nobody leave your house and go out and play tragedy. I can't believe it's already the end of April. We had thought we'd be able to go back outside and the ban be lifted as of the 30th, so that's why I planned 13 of these. Hi Melissa, welcome. Hi Ellen. Well, it didn't have to be the final one forever, but in this series, I think I'm going to need to take a little break for a minute because I've got some book deadline I need to work on. But anyway, here we are, number 13, the lucky 13, and I thought since Beltane was right around the corner, if you follow calendar, that'd be May 1st. If you follow astrology, that'd be May 4th. It's coming up. And so I thought we could talk a little bit about the Wheel of the Year as it's the number one most asked about. I'd like to know more about neo-pagan Wicca. Hi Liz, hey Jenny. I'm happy to see everybody popping in. Anyway, tonight's also the night we get to do the drawings. Haha. Remember, I've been putting your names in there, everybody. First cheers. What's in y'all's chalices? Who's drinking? Who's drinking tea or whatever tonight? It's red wine again. I get one of those boxes, you know, when I go to the grocery store. I'm very classy like that. I also thought since this is Beltane, we could talk a little bit about, you know, crafts. I didn't go to the craft store. Lemon ginger tea, very nice. Very nice. I think you bought that at the Sojourner, didn't you? I think I scooped it for you. This is my Beltane crown. I wish I had all the Coven's crowns. I'd show you guys as a show and tell. Hey, peppermint tea. Nice to see you, Liz. Thanks for the friend request also. Cheers once more. I'm not feeling particularly put together for this here chat. I might be a little scatterbrained tonight. Well, that's pretty normal. Anyway, the way I make my crowns, and we made a bunch of them for the Coven for our normal big Beltane celebrations, because we have when we do it, we do the big whole shooting match where we have the maypole dance, and we do an election, well, the selection of the May Queen, and then the May Queen selects her king, and then they aspect the goddess and god for us for the weekend, and then it's kind of like their wedding ceremonially. There's a fantastic giant horned crown that the first priest of our coven and other of the men who originally founded with us helped to create this beautiful crown, Coyote being one of them. And then we made the women identifying got together and made beautiful silk flower crowns for all the roles that the female side of the force played in that ritual. This is just my personal one, and it's silly. It's not the silliest one I've ever made. I actually made I made it originally where these were the flowers all the way around, which, if you can imagine, I mean, those are some big flowers. But I switched it up a few years later, and I put some fun little springy things sticking up, and there's even a little butterfly right there. But the way I do it is I get that raffia wrapped wire from the craft store. You know that stuff? It comes in big spools. It's used in the florist section. Hi Carol. Lisa Carol. So I get the raffia wrapped wire, and then I'll just take 3 really long strands of that. I don't even know how much it needs, depending on how big your weave and how big your head. I start with probably 2 yards at least. And then I just do a really large chunky braid, right? So I'm just weaving it like a basket. And then once it's in there and tied off at the ends, what I do is I leave it where it's open at the back. And I just have one little pokey bit on one side, and I loop the others on the other side. And then that way, when it's around my head and I just need to fit it, I make that part extra long so it's adjustable. And then when I put it in the loop, I can just fold it down to match my head. And then I tie ribbons on the back. So let's see how it looks. And then I tied one of my very original, no, actually that's not my original pinnacle. I did get this on a necklace. And then I wanted to use something else on the necklace, so I had removed it. Ready for dancing of maypoles. Jenny says, I have several around the house. I try to make a new one each year. It's a fun little meditative craft for me. It is for me too. Every year in our dedicant class, well, it's either in the class right before Beltane or we do it as a big craft for everyone there. We just bring out giant bags of silk flowers that I get at like Dollar Tree or whatever. You know, the cheap stems, or you can go to Michael's or wherever and get the nice stuff. And hot glue guns and ribbons. And we just have a little craft project. I've seen the men folk make some really great ones too. You know, things that look like big leaves sticking up like they might be Green Man, like horned god kind of crowns too. It's been fun. Anyway, too bad we won't be wearing those to dance the maypole this year, but that won't keep me from putting on my crown and pretending, I suppose, on Beltane Day. Well, that's one thing. Jenny, I was looking through my notebook, and in my my class notebook, I have all the original rituals that we've ever done. And at the end of Beltane session, I found where we had planned out our Beltane for the class together and had signed rolls, and your name is written in. Aww, in 2011. And Kayla's. It was good memories. Anyway, Wheel of the Year. This is how we celebrate how the seasons change one to the other. And the high holidays of the grand Sabbats at the midpoint of the seasons, those are called grand Sabbats. And then there's the lesser Sabbats, which are the holidays we celebrate as we transition from one season to the other. And there are many ways of figuring out when you celebrate. Various Wiccan traditions will have just set dates on the calendar. I call that the Gregorian calendar method because that's basically the method used by, I don't know, society in the bank, in the Catholic Church. And then there's the other way, primarily the only way for me, is the astrological way. So I thought I'd just talk a bit about that. A long time ago, I wrote, one of my favorite articles, to be honest, because it is just so full of sexual innuendo and puns and jokes that, I just crack myself up. And I really like it. It's called A Case for Astrological Timing of the Sabbats. And I posted it originally in 2017 on May 2nd, because that year I believe that Beltane landed like on the 6th or the 7th, something like that. It was pretty late in May. So all the folks who were celebrating on May 1st kind of like were packing it in like, oh, the holiday's over. And I'm like, well, wait, there's still more time and we still can do this, make it a party that keeps on going. So anyway, but I wrote a blog kind of laying out why I do that and how we do that. And then I thought I'd recommend too that if you're interested in any of this, it's really that great book. I keep pimping this book out by Ivo Dominguez, but the Practical Astrology for Witches and Pagans, using the planets and the stars for effective spell work, rituals, and magical work. If you want to know the details of how to create a practice based on astrology, every detail you need is already in his book. So. Also, I'd point out that if you use the Llewellyn Witches calendar, this guy every year, as I do, both will be marked in the book. Ellen got her copy of that book today. Well, I hope you like it as much as I did. I went through with a notebook and I made copious notes. I mean, I studied it, every word. And he's such a fine fellow. Hopefully if we get to go to Mystic South, he'll be there again. Yeah, Jenny, it's a good book. I think if you want to use or understand astrology for your practice at all, and frankly, I don't know how people wouldn't want to at least know a little bit about that, it's just a great book. He does such a good job. Anyway, I just want to point out on the date book that it will have both dates in there for you. So for example, if you're looking at May 1st, it actually says Beltane, May Day. And then over here on May 4th, it says Beltane cross quarter day, sun reaches 15 degrees Taurus. So it'll be in both places. If you've read my blog at all, you've seen this bits and pieces of this image. And no, I don't have it available anywhere in its fullness so that people can download and use it yet. But I thought I'd show you what my original one looks like, because it's got a screw in the middle so that I can move it around and per the year, and I can also move the moon one moves separately so that I can adjust that to show exactly when the moon is for each year, because remember, they move. So for example, this is the moon that was in Sagittarius. The dotted line is where it was last year, and the solid one is where it is this year. And so that's how much difference there is and how the moons move. So anyway, I had to have it where it was, could be moved around. Just let me put it back where it was. So the moon that I celebrate in Taurus, I call it the flower moon, and it's happening just after Beltane this year. So Beltane is on the 4th, then flower moon is on the 7th this year. So I've just moved it three little dashes down, and that'll show exactly where everything lands this year. And I hope to one day have these produced, especially when the books come out. Y'all cross your fingers for me that I can convince Llewellyn or somebody to help produce these to be a companion to the book in some way, at least a poster, but I think one that moves would be cool. Anyway, so the way that I celebrate the Wheel of the Year, and I've got notes, but I'm going to just see if I can go off the cuff on this. Hey, Allison. Like I said in a previous video, I like to start the Wheel of the Year in the north, in Capricorn, when the sun enters Capricorn. Yule is the Sabbath that we celebrate at winter solstice. So the lesser Sabbaths form like a plus sign, a cross in the wheel. But the greater Sabbaths, the high holy days, are this X. Now why would that be? So if you'll note, this, just to give the lay of this thing, if you're used to reading an astrological chart, it is backwards. Astrological charts flow counterclockwise. Mine is a different thing altogether. It flows clockwise. So the outer ring here, with this ring, has two things on it. One, it has the zodiac signs, divided equally like pie wedges. And I know that our orbit around the sun is not a perfect circle, I know, but this is as if it was, and then it's just divided into 360 degrees and equal 30-degree chunks. So that's just how I've done it for this graphic. But it starts at Capricorn, and then you see that the signs go, I know this reads backwards to y'all, so just go with me on this. The seasons each have 3 signs. You see, this petal represents a season, right? This petal represents spring. This one is summer. This one is autumn. This one is winter. For each of these cycles, if you'll imagine, that's a season. Each one has 3 signs. Each one begins with the cardinal sign. In the middle is the fixed sign. And at the end of the season is the mutable sign. This is the triplicity. It's the order of every cycle everywhere. There's the beginning, where it raises up and gets bigger and bigger. That's the cardinal. Into fixed, that's where it peaks and kind of hangs for a minute. And then it descends again, and that's the mutable. So that's this waveform. Even though the elements of each sign change, it is always cardinal, fixed, mutable. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. So the grand Sabbaths are the high point of a waveform. They are the high energy swell of that season. Meanwhile, the lesser Sabbaths are just a low point where we just transition. We say goodbye to the old and we transition into the new. So important, they mark the time, no problem, but they're not really an agricultural high point in the Wheel of the Year. That's why they're called a lesser Sabbath. They're still all really important, but If you ever wondered why we make such a big deal out of Samhain and Beltane, for example, they happen to be grand Sabbats. And their power is so much stronger because it is the peak swell of that season. So that, to me, regardless of what day of the calendar year it falls on, because to me the Gregorian calendar is of zero consequence magically. I'm here to tell you the cosmos and its great mechanism does not give two shits when Pope Gregory the whatever back in 13 or 4, whatever many hundreds of years ago decided that they needed to come up with a new plan because Easter didn't fall when the Catholic Church liked it anymore. It just doesn't have anything to do with the cycles of nature. Nature does not consult with the bank in its energy flow. And so I don't use the calendar at all. What I like to do is always celebrate the Sabbath when it either enters the cardinal sign, so 0 degrees cardinal, or the day that it shifts from the previous season, the previous mutable, into the new cardinal sign, says this is a new season. And even astrology and astronomy and the scientists and the news, they'll all be like, oh, hey, today's the first day of spring, and we can all agree on that. And that's when pagans do that too. That's a thing. In the pagan calendar, when is Ostara? Well, we'll always go look. When is spring equinox? That is a set date based on where we are around the sun that day. So, for consistency, what I like to say is internal consistency. The midpoint of this season, if this is 30 degrees, 30 degrees, 30 degrees, 0 of Capricorn, 0 of Aries. The midpoint will be when we are halfway between, in the middle of Aquarius here for Emil. So that'd be, the midpoint of Aquarius is 15 degrees. Same thing on all of them. We switch around and now look at spring. We entered Ostara, or we celebrated Ostara when we entered Aries. So Beltane will be the 15 degrees of Taurus in the fixed sign. Boom, right? And then it'll decline again as we leave Taurus and get into Gemini. We leave Gemini, and then we'll celebrate summer solstice at the end, and so forth and so on. So I just really think it's convenient. There is the exact same amount of time between Sabbats that way. If you were to follow the calendar method, what I found inconsistent is that the equinoxes and solstices were celebrated on the exact day we enter the sign, like everyone else celebrates. Like everybody celebrates that everywhere. But the difference here was if you have a fixed date of just saying it's May 1st, well, then you're going to be a couple days early, a couple days late. Usually it's a couple days early. Same thing with Samhain, same thing with Lammas, same thing with Imbolc. It would be inconsistent number of days, and I just don't understand why doing a fixed date on some of them, but not all of them, makes sense. So I just like to be consistent. It just makes sense to me. Plus, if you do this energetically, and you really tap in and you do it for a while, you'll just still feel it. The power is still swelling. And the moon, for example, we say, oh, we're going to do some work in the waxing moon phase. And then when it's full, when the day of the full moon is there, that's the peak of the moon. There's an exact scientific moment that the moon passes from waxing and shifts over into waning. Or we could talk about the sign that it's in and when it leaves the sign. It's exact. It's precise according to astronomical movements of the cosmos. And so I just like to be consistent there too. This season is swelling. It is growing, growing, growing until the midpoint, and then the season itself has a tide that will begin to wane again. We can celebrate anytime we want to up until the peak of that tide. It is still the peak. It's still the swelling, waxing thing. So if you're going to do growing magic, which is what agricultural magic is really, the growing tide of spring, you want to tap into that and use that. As far as I'm concerned, you've got all the way to May 4th. You can celebrate any day you want to. If you try to go too far after that, it kind of feels like you missed the moment. Like, yeah, we're done. We're just gonna get chafed if we keep humping here. That kind of thing. So anyway, I just feel like it's consistent. So how I would do it is I celebrate Dun, dun, dun. Let me move my moons around again. So just to go through the year, I like to begin the great work at, dun, dun, dun. Here we go. Here we go. I like to begin the great work at Yule, when we enter Capricorn, the earthy sign of Capricorn. And we celebrate lots of things at that time that have to do with Saturn. Saturn rules Capricorn. That would be like Father Time and that kind of thing. And Baby New Year. And we like to cast our eyes into the future and begin to hope and dream of the new wheel. From, just to back up a bit, from Samhain until Yule, I feel like that's a time of quiet, do nothing, reflection. I believe the wheel ends basically at Samhain, and then there's a pause in the darkness to reflect backwards over the year, to rest and relax, regroup. I like to read over my old journals. I like to think about what's, wrap up any work, clean the tools, put them away, that kind of thing, and then go into more of a reflective, divinatory kind of mode in reflection back over the previous year. And I do that from Samhain until Yule. To me, that's the darkness before the dawn, and every cycle begins in the darkness before the actual beginning. So that's how I celebrate there. And then Yule's like the hope of the new year, the new light being born, and all the mythos of the great goddess who's been pregnant since Ostara and has followed her husband, her consort, the god, into the underworld as he sacrificed himself at Lammas, and has descended into the underworld and arrived at Samhain, like the great funeral. But this is where the birth happens, and so she begins to transmute again back into the maiden then, and everything reemerges. It's like, okay, well, now we can leave the underworld again, and I'm going to remerge and start traveling to start to awaken and stir beneath the earth. Like, oh, I'm almost there when we get to Imbolc. Imbolc is when we're 15 degrees Aquarius. That's an air sign. That's the other thing to note too. If you do the 15 degrees of each sign, you have in one in each element. So you'll end up with, Aquarius, air at Imbolc, and Earth, Taurus at Beltane, and Leo's fires at Lammas, and Scorpio's waters at Samhain. So there's some nice balance there too. Anyway, once we get to Imbolc, that's when I like to make the dedication. Everything from Yule to Imbolc is, to me, doing the divination and to look forward into the future. It's like a turning of your inner eye. You have to turn your inner eye into the future and see. Anyway, start to figure out what you want to do for your next great work. So again, just a lot of preparation. And before then, usually at the moon, whatever moon falls, I name the moons basically the same way they do in the Llewellyn calendar, just to be easy. But whatever moon, when the full moon occurs in Capricorn, I like to call that the cold moon for the winter. Hey Justin, hey Courtney. And then when we get into Aquarius, the full moon that falls there, I call that the quickening moon, because things are quickening and starting to stir in nature again for me, and also in the great work. So, at this moon, I might be preparing candles, getting my journal ready, writing intention statements, that kind of thing. I like to get things ready and cleaned up and set for the new year. Then we get to, after Imbolc, and this begins the work, anew. I get into airy mysteries. That's the outer wheel here. I didn't mention that before. The outer wheel is how I celebrate the elemental cycles, and in conjunction with all of that, once I shift into the airy mysteries here at Imbolc, start to gather information, take classes, read books, take notes, figure out what people already know about the subject, educate myself as we get into Pisces. The moon I celebrate in Pisces, I call that storm moon. Once we shift past Ostara, and that's the spring equinox, that's the world is anew, and fertility abounds. And you think about it, people talk about Beltane being the consummation, but really, if the human life cycle is, the gestation period is 9 months-ish, then really, and it's born at Yule, then that would have to be Ostara. So to me, that's the fertilization. All of nature is emerging from the nest, and the buds are breaking out on the trees, at least around here anyway. And there's a real fertilization feel at that time. coming on around. When we get to now, between Ostara and Beltane, well, we've all been indoors this year. But after Ostara, I shift into the wonderment side of air mysteries. Okay, this is what people knew before, but I start to ask questions. What could be different? What do we do? What do I do with this information new? How can I apply it in a new way for me? You have to be open to wonderment to really have any kind of innovation, to do something new and meaningful for yourself. If you just keep grinding the same old wheel and the same old stuff and you never ask questions, where you get stagnant, right? So try to really open myself up to the wonder of what I'm doing and allow new things to come. So that's what I like to do. From Ostara, I focus on that until Beltane. Beltane, like I said, 15 degrees of Taurus, very earthy, very sensual, very physical. It's definitely about the enjoyment of life. To me, very sacral chakra and dancing and singing and kind of going all out and celebrating. It's the party, It's like a really good wedding party. And then Flower Moon is what we'll celebrate this year. It's May 7th, just after Beltane on the 4th. And that happens to be my firstborn beautiful daughter's 18th birthday. So we're going to celebrate the full moon on her birthday this year. Once we shift over and the spring season begins to wane again into Gemini, whenever the moon is full in Gemini, that's a strong sun moon to me. We celebrate Letha, that is summer solstice, as the high peak of the god's power. So all of this, from the beginning of the new baby sun to here, was the growth of a masculine solar idea. Thank you. I will tell her you said happy birthday, Michelle. So this is all the growing half of the year of the light, and this is the high peak of that sun. So a lot of things about success and attainment and the peak of one's power and mastery. We always do the battle of the holly and the oak king ceremonially. They battle both at winter solstice and at summer solstice. And at winter solstice, the holly king is defeated and died. He's like Father Christmas figure. But the Oak King is triumphant, and then the Oak King is defeated at the summer solstice, and the Holly King wins, and then he takes the dark half of the year. When we get into, but once we have, from Beltane to Letha, I celebrate fire mysteries also. That's my, that time to really apply my will and start doing something. What's my will in this? I want to start doing a lot of action. It's really just the dewy part of the magic for me. Really kick it off and get those fires stoked, right? When we pass Letha and into Cancer, that's when I shift into the surrender side of the fire's mysteries. Anything that's burning has to consume. And so what needs to be consumed, what needs to be allowed to go into, be transformed, transmuted into something better. Anything you put in fire changes, right? You put in... chuck in some wood, and we have consumption of air and consumption of material earth, and it releases as light and heat, and it transmutes it. But if you put steel in, impurities are burned away, and it's sharper and stronger, for example. So in any work you're doing, you want to make room for something new in your life. You have to make space for it. And why keep all the old junk that's not doing you any good all cluttering around? Feed them to your fires and allow them to be transmuted into this new thing for yourself. So I focus on surrender. Something always has to go, whether that be an old stale idea or being too fixed or rigid in one's thinking or actions or whatever. Inevitably, something has to go. So I release that. From Letha to Lammas, also known as Lunasa. So then Lunasa, or Lammas, is celebrated at 15 degrees Leo. That's a very fiery sign, very hot. So to me, that really is midsummer, high summer. I know people sometimes call Letha midsummer, but that's the first day of summer to me, and this really is it, as far as I'm concerned, in my own biome. So that's high summer. And then and whatever moon I celebrate in Cancer, I call that the blessing moon. And then we get on into Leo. Corn moon quite often will fall right on Lammas, which is so cool because both are that's the first harvest of grain for me. Anyway, once we get into past Lammas, and that's when we celebrate the sacrificial king. It's the first harvest where we start to cut down the grain and cut down, harvest the vegetables. And it's the idea that nature feeds itself to itself. That death is in every stage of the cycle of life. And if we've been metaphorically saying that the God is like the grain rising from the earth, it is the physical manifestation of food and the wild animals and the sustenance given of divinity so that we may thrive, then the very food that we harvest is the God giving of himself so that we can survive. So that's the sacrificial king mythos, Lammas or Lunasa, and the idea being that he gives of himself so that we can eat, and then begins a kind of underworld journey to arrive at Samhain at that point. But it's not like immediate. It's more like, they're the giving of the god. And then when we get to Mabon, that's when we enter into Libra, the Aries sign of Libra, which is about balance. And we've crossed at that point through Virgo. When we got into Virgo, whenever that moon was, that's the harvest moon to me. At Mabon, that's the Thanksgiving feast. That's the second harvest of more like vegetables and the rest of the stuff where you sit down and you focus on your gratitude, the balance of giving and receiving, starting to really enjoy the bounty of all the hard work. So, in an agricultural sense, it's the food on the table. And then in our great work, we begin to reap the rewards of what we've been doing and then claim those for ourselves with gratitude. But because there's a balance, it's not just what do I get, gimme, gimme, gimme. It's what I'm going to continue to give into this process. So usually at that time I make some commitment of what I'm going to continue to give into the cycle to keep returning back so that balance receives open for me. Like I say, the hand that is open from generously giving is the hand that's already opened, ready to receive what one needs. So that's my lesson in Mabon. Whatever moon falls in Libra, I call that the blood moon. We now begin into autumn at that point. But I should have mentioned that when we were at Lammas, we shifted into the water mysteries for me. So the projective mystery of water is to dare. What boundaries must you overcome? What obstacles must be torn down? What needs to be recarved, like a river carving the earth, carved in a new way to open new channels of possibility for yourself or for your work to manifest. So that's when I focus on daring. What needs to be deconstructed here? And then I get into, once we pass Mabon, I get into the ideas of acceptance. Acceptance is the mold of the cup. Those emotional waters are going to be reformed now because we've done all this work. The work is going to take a new form, and that form is going to begin to manifest itself. So there will be some things that must be accepted about the emotional condition around it or whatever. Oh, that's the parameter now. I'm gonna allow to pour my emotional waters into that form and allow it to form me, like a Jello mold or something like that. It just cracks me up. Once we get into Scorpio, the fixed sign of watery Scorpio, 15 degrees Samhain. Scorpio is when we celebrate Samhain. That's the third harvest. It's the death and the harvest of meats. It's typically you don't want to still be bringing anything in from the fields. That's considered to be bad luck if you take anything else in after Samhain. That's when you would cull the herd, for example, in the old agricultural cycle. But where I'm not a pig farmer or anything like that. So in my way of thinking about that, there's sort of a need for scaling down simplicity, releasing what no longer serves, allowing the gentle release of things that are too much so that I can sustain what I need, for example. Every year it takes its own way, but inevitably we understand that all things come to an end. And like a snake shedding his skin, we've been growing. It's that moment to go, okay, well, the old me no longer exists, and I'm going to shed that old skin and let it go so that I can become the new, better me in the next cycle. Whatever full moon falls in Scorpio, we call that the morning moon. And then here we are here we are. So that's when the work ends. That's the end of the year. And so we allow it to die away. It's the grand funeral. It's like an opening of the underworld and allowing all that doesn't serve its time to go, honoring our ancestors, glorying in the fact that death is not really an end, and that we can celebrate memory and contribution of even those, of the people we loved who died. But we know that it's all a cycle, and that nothing ever really dies, nothing ever really goes away. It just changes form, and they live on in different ways. Then we get into Sagittarius. Mutable ends a cycle. Sagittarius ends the year in a nice, fiery, warm, hearthside, intelligent way. Sagittarius is all about what do you know, academics, and to me it reminds me of a wise old crone, or somebody sitting around deep in the fires and stoking those coals, that making sure that the embers stay lit all winter. That's the image I get with fiery Sagittarius there. And whatever full moon falls, we call that long night's moon, because it's going to be so dark now by comparison. And then Yule is the longest night of the year, so the very longest one. So that's how I do the wheel. The last bit of the elemental is that from Samhain, like I said, I don't look forward to the new year. I look back over the old year. I rest, I reflect. I don't rush into conclusions. I am silent in earthy mysteries. I hold the space. I don't rush to jam into the space that I have created for this new thing to manifest. I don't try to overthink it. I just let it go in silence, and I reflect quietly. And like I said before, once I get to Yule, that's when I can begin to look into the new turning of the wheel. And the lessons of resonance are the receptive form of earth, that it's kind of like saying, all right, I want to create something new in my life coming up, and I have an idea of what that needs to be. And it's kind of like striking the gong, the cosmic gong, and saying, and I want it to be at a vibration like this, ding. And then like attracts like vibrations attract like vibrations. More of the same will begin to come into your life, or it'll start to sing that new song that you can hear. That's sort of how I think about resonance. So there it is, my Wheel of the Year graphic. I have people at least 3 times a year say, where can I get that whole thing and buy it or whatever. It is the basis of the book that I'm writing. So I'm sure that that's all my just hand done, hand painted, hand calligraphied version. I'm sure that something slicker and better can be come up with. Anyway, I just feel like it's an elegant system if it has consistency. And thank you, Ellen. She says that was a detailed and beautiful. Well, I think so. I love my graphic. I had to come up with that one time, a long time ago, when I was trying to teach a class on how all the patterns fit together. It's hard to imagine them together, all intersected, and how does it flow without being able to see it. For the books, I came up with a new graphic that I've never posted anywhere. If y'all want to see something right off the drawing board, I'll show you. It's the linear version of this. I know it's backwards, but that's that wheel laid out in a line. Right? Thank you, Alan. Okay, so it's really rough draft. But imagine these color bands. Those are the seasons. This is the moon, showing that it waxes and wanes. And I know it's a little dramatic. The dark moon always at the bottom, the quarters, the full moon always at the top. And then this is the Sabbats. And I just used relative height on the thing. It's not like scientifically plotted or anything. It's just visually. But I did it where, sort of like this is the longest day, so it's the highest. And this is the shortest day, so it's the lowest. But anyway, I just wanted to show that it's a waveform, both in the year. But then there's also, in each season, there's always a cardinal, a fixed, a mutable. And each one will have 3 moons, you know? But they don't always fall neatly. Yeah, you do love a good chart. I've got so many good drawings and charts in the book if they'll let me do them. Of course, I need color for a lot of this. I don't know how it's going to be rendered once the actual graphics team gets to it. Anyway, so you know, again, the seasons, the zodiac signs, the elemental mysteries, and then of course the months, and then showing how the Gregorian calendar doesn't match any of that. It just irritates me. Anyway, I had to show it going through a couple years to show how it did. So anyway, things I had to figure out. So I had to draw this to basically understand in the year that I did it, this happened to be 2019, how the moons laid out. And these moons also begin to show, because I put the sign on each one. So if the moon is in the full moon, let's see, let's do this one right here. Where are we? Here we are in Taurus. That was the year there was a blue moon in Aries. I'll get to that in a minute. So let's see. The flower moon in this time actually fell just like a hot minute right before the end of Taurus. So it was still flower moon, even though it was like just a degree or two, a day or two before we left Taurus. And so, you know, if the moon is always in the opposite sign, the full moon is always in the opposite sign to where the sun is. So whenever we're in Taurus here, we're in Scorpio, the moon is, right? Let's see, show this better. When we are in the moon, if the full moon is in Taurus, we see it full because it is in Scorpio, because the opposite side of the wheel, and they always go in pairs, right? So I just wanted to show that the Taurus dark moon came before the full moon in Taurus, and I was just mapping that out, and I showed where they were. Now the reason, what would make something a blue moon then, right, is if there's more than one moon in a zodiac sign. I know we've talked about this a million, or I don't know if I've talked about it on these videos. I say it all the time in my blog. To me, the only thing that makes sense on how to name a blue moon, if you're using an astrological system anyway, for internal consistency, is that it would be the second full moon in a zodiac sign, so that you get to work that same solar-lunar pairing twice. So for example, in Aries last year, the wind moon occurred like a minute after we entered into Aries. And so that's when you got to do the Aries-Libra combo of the full moon and the sun. And then the next full moon was like a minute before we left Aries. It was like, you know, 29 degrees. This was like 1 degree and 29 degrees. And so it was the exact same pairing of energies that you get a second chance to work. So it's a great opportunity to work those same juicy vibes twice for a two-parter, if you wanted a two-part spell. But anyway, it's a spare, and that means that there were, you know, we always say there's 12 or 13 moons, and to me, it doesn't matter if it's in the Gregorian calendar year at all. I mean, who cares? I don't care at all about that. To me, it's if there are 13 within the wheel of the year, so from Capricorn to Capricorn. And I think every third year, it's like every 2.5 years, is when you get the extra moon. So anyway, wheel of the year. So that's why I use the calendar. You know, I do my spells that way. Not the calendar, the wheel of the year by astrology. I just use astrology for everything. I just don't use the calendar. So, because I do spells according to that. I celebrate the Esbats of the moon according to astrology. I celebrate the lesser equinoxes and solstices according to astrology, you know, the 0 degree, the cardinal sign. And so there's just no reason for me to plunk May 1st or October 31st into there. To me, those can be holidays. They just aren't necessarily the end of the Sabbath to me. I say celebrate all 6 weeks. Anyway, that's how I do it. Thank you for showing up, everybody. It's been fun seeing some new names tonight. This is, like I said, the last one I'm planning to do for a while. It's 9:45, which is when I used to say these things were only going to last 45 minutes, and then I got going to where I was like an hour and a half sometimes. But I did want to do the drawings for the goodies, and I don't have them all the way prepared yet because I'm still waiting for some material. So y'all will have to forgive me then for that. But I will make note of who I'm sending what. And here's what I'd like to give out. You know, we made this moon water together, the charged moon water for both Venus and the moon that had roses and, you know, all the good juju we did together. And I've got a fair amount of it, and I did order some little blue dropper bottles, and so I was going to divide some of this up and give 3 of the moon waters away. So, but let me tell you everything first. So we're going to give 3 little moon waters away, and you know I'm making some Beltane rum. That's going to be a little bit before it's done, but then I'm probably going to divide it up into some little individual things. So, you know, there's like a shot or so, or 2 or 3 in a little bottle, and have that around. So I'm going to do a bottle of that. I've also got the mug that I ordered from our Teespring. That can be one of our giveaways. And I have a 4 incense set of my elemental incense: earth, fire, water, and air. And I'm going to draw to give away the set with its information cards. So you know what's in there. You know its planetary associations also. And then I have 1 jar of a hand-blended lunar incense that I made last year. Part of a big working, and I had some left. It's been sealed since then. Let's see how it is. Ah, yeah. It smells like the moon, baby. Heavy on the gardenia and myrrh. It's transcendent. It's very mellow. It's very mellow. Anything lunar to me is very mellow. It's got some good stuff in it, though. Okay. I'll find the card and be able to tell you exactly what's in it in a minute. Or before I send it to whomever. Okay, so that's all the things. Remember, every single time somebody made a donation, I put your name in here. And if you happen to have made a really frickin' large one, I put your name as many times as it would have been your average size of donation. Just so you know, if you're thinking, damn, I wish I hadn't given her $1 million all in one check. Yeah, wasn't like that. But anyway, thank you, everyone. You've been very generous. I've had a lot of fun, and the store appreciates you. Okay. Let's do for some moon water first. For moon waters, Mary Catherine and Stephen Hall, thank you. Got 3 of these to pull. Lisa Raymond. Jenny Fox. Dun, da, da. That's for the water. Now let's do for the booze. I'm pretty sure everybody on here is over 21. I will ensure that whoever receives this is over 21. Beltane Brew. Who needs them some Beltane Brew? Suzanne Merle. Hope I said your name right. Get some Beltane Brew. All right. The mug. Need my son in here to do a drum roll. Tammy House for the mug. Thank you, Tammy. And for the lunar incense. Da, 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 da. Georgette Ponder. Thank you, Georgette. Okay, for the 4 incense set. It's kind of like a grand prize. You win the 4 incense set. All right, I feel like we need one more. And I don't have anything else just sitting here, so here's what I'm going to offer. When the blessed day comes that my first book from Llewellyn is printed and in my hands, I will sign a special copy and mail it. And let's just hope I don't keel over dead from the worry of the damn thing before it's published. So, no promises. Ta-da! Carrie Powell, my friend Carrie Powell. All right, Carrie, wherever you may be, if ever I get this book published in my hands, I will send you a copy, my good old friend. Probably owe her one anyway, because she's an astrologer who taught me so much of what I know from about, 15 years. All right. Thank you, everybody. Who has any questions or anything? Anybody have anything you wanted to ask me about? Beltane or the Wheel of the Year, or I don't know. How y'all been? This has been fun. I'm almost sorry it's over. It's been such a pleasure, everybody. Oh, check this out. This is sort of what I started to do for Beltane. I picked these beautiful flowers today. Aren't they beautiful? From my yard. I would love to know what this is. Does anybody know what that is? It's growing on these big weeping, like willowy looking bush sort of thing in my yard. And I didn't plant it, so I'm unaware. But what I did was I went out and I picked a bunch of roses from my rose bushes. I got knockout roses. And I don't know what these are. One of those giant bushes. And I don't know what those are, but one of the things that I remember learning most from one of my teachers, an elder in the community, was that in England, I guess, Beltane was when the white flowering trees began to bloom. That was Beltane. So all my beautiful white flowering things are in bloom. Oh, I don't know, Liz, is it agrimony? That wouldn't be in a giant bush just planted in eastern North Carolina, would it? Agrimony? I will figure this out. I got some plant people I know were watching earlier. I don't know if they're still on here. But I sure would love to know what that is. I need to do one of those identify a plant apps. Anyway, so whenever I start to see the white flowering trees, like the dogwoods blooming, and the blackberry bushes are all, beautiful white flowers, it just feels like it's time to start celebrating Beltane. Anyway, that's how I've been doing it. And I also wanted to point out this once more. The things I learned most about the mysteries of Beltane, and they're very complex. I could do a whole class just on the mysteries of Beltane that I wasn't quite prepared to jump into tonight. But I learned the true beauty of them, and there's some really beautiful ritual language in this book that I've mentioned before. I will always sing the praises of this book by Vivian Crowley, or Crowley. I'm not sure how she says her name. But it's the Old Religion in the New Millennium Wicca book. You see all my tabs, Jenny, that's for you. See, I reference this book so often that I need to have the little stickum tabs. That's my most favorite occult item, is little stickum tabs. And then I have a number of things I like to reference and use in rites. For example, this is the section on Beltane and the May King and Queen. There's so many beautiful poems that are like liturgy that are hers are in here. Let's see. Here, I'll read you one from Vivian Crowley and then we'll sign off. So this, she says, for a woman, the second aspect of the goddess, the lover mother, represents the strengthened ego that is capable of making choices. For a man, it is the sun king aspect of the god which plays this role. At midsummer, the god is offered kingship and consciousness, but the price is to know the anguish of his own physical mortality. No man finds this an easy path. And so then here's this poetic liturgy. Once long ago, my love, when we were first young, beneath the budding trees of spring, you gave me the cup of life to drink, and gave me yourself in equal measure. I promised myself to you then and forever, that whatever you sought I would give, whatever you asked I would perform. But I married thee, my love, and not thy land. I roam the woodlands wild, the deer my companions, and the birds my friends. The green wood is my home, and not the seat of kings. If I share thy crown, I must live for thy people, no more for myself. for you and my child, and I feared to take this kingship, for before me I see darkness and pain and blood upon the corn, the shadow of my death. Great speech for the May King. Beautiful liturgy. Anyway, it goes on. It's quite the passion tale of responsibility. Taking responsibility for what one creates in the world, and responsibility for wise governance, which is really the deeper mystery of Beltane, more than just shagging in the woods. Not that that's a bad thing either, but anyway. Well, y'all, it has been a whole hour, and it has been fun, and I thank you all so much for joining me during this lockdown of the last, God, it's been 6 weeks now since we started canceling things and staying home. As you know, the store is still doing curbside pickup. I'll be there tomorrow, actually, taking orders over the phone and running purchases out to the car where I can prepare to ship. So anywhere noon to 6. Wednesday, we'll be there ready to. I'll be there ready to take your call. Oh, a mock orange flower. Thank you, Courtney. Philadelphia species. I'll go look up some more on that and see if I can identify it. Thank you very much. So yeah, we'll be there. You can call the store at 252-758-7656, and I'll help you out tomorrow. We got many beautiful things. I'd love to help do a kind of personal shopper and just walk you through if there's anything you're looking for. Or Courtney's been awesome about posting to the Sojourner Clubhouse lots of pictures and their information and prices. If you're not already on the Sojourner Clubhouse group, please go find it, and we'll add you in, and then you can see everything. And then hopefully after May 8th, the governor will open the state up a little bit, at which point we will be letting people in. But we're going to be real sticklers about it, and we hope you all will play along. We're hoping that, well, what we plan to do is very strict sanitation protocols. We'll still only be open Wednesday through Saturday, so we can attend to, proper cleaning and distancing of ourselves also. We're going to let in less than 3 at a time, and we're going to ask everybody to wear a mask, and we'll provide a paper one if you don't have one. And we're also going to either provide little plastic food service gloves or hand sanitizer as a choice coming in and out. And we hope that that will be enough to keep everyone safe for the foreseeable future. And then we'll see beyond that. So if you happen to have gotten one of these postcards from me before the governor changed the date, then the dates on the back won't be quite right. I apologize. If you have not, some people should probably already be getting these from me in the mail. If you've made a donation through PayPal or put money on your account or any of those things during the during these videos and during the lockdown, then I'm probably going to mail you one of these if I haven't already personally put one in your bag and handed it to you. But I'm starting to mail these out if I know people are local, because they do have a 20% off your purchase coupon. That you have to have the postcard. We're hoping that once we can let folks in the door and you can come see all the gorgeous statues and the dream catchers and the light catchers and all the beautiful new everything. We had loaded up on beautiful things before we had to close the doors. Hoping that you'll be able to come see all of that and give us a little boost, but also it'll take the edge off for you. And so hopefully we can help each other out in that situation. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Thanks for your PayPal donations to orders@thesojo.com. If you're able to donate, having received anything of value from this video, we do appreciate that. I will be leaving it up on, the video will be left up on Facebook, but also be posted to my YouTube channel as well, Heron Michelle, for posterity. And then you can also still order swag off of our teespring.com store, the Sojourner Tees. We've got a number of things that are just going to stay up there for whenever anybody likes them, and we're still working on some new things too. So this has been really fun. Hopefully we'll do some more of something in the future like this. But for now, I'm just going to say namaste because I need to finish the book and I need my brains back for that. So anyway, I appreciate you all. I love you all. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe out there. Merry meet, merry part, merry meet again. And until we can give each other a big old hug, namaste, away at at least six feet apart. Y'all stay safe. Bye.